listeners, Problemless Practice, a part of our learning journey here at the Human School. Today, we have a guest with us, and her name is Bonnie. Please say hello and share more about yourself.
Bonnie. I am an 8th grade ELA teacher in a public school in Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Welcome, Bonnie. So in each episode, we will discuss a practitioner-based challenge through a human-centered lens. And these conversations are intended to ground us in the practical work that's happening in our schools every day and to bring our compass points into focus around those questions. So Bonnie, go ahead and share the thing you're thinking about or wondering about.
Well, the thing that I've been thinking about lately is that there's somewhat of a death of the classroom novel, right? We aren't reading class novels as much as we used to because we've been moving more towards student choice, allowing students to choose what they read. But in the years after COVID, I've noticed that when I bring a classroom set of novels into the room, my students are like, are we going to read that together? So it seems as though students who have done this before are missing this activity a little bit.
So a lady after my own heart as a fellow English teacher. So what is it that you feel like is so resonant for kids about that makes them excited about that experience?
I'm not sure. I wonder if it stems from our experiences with COVID, where we felt so isolated because we were going to school on a computer and we weren't in a classroom. And so maybe it's one of those things that students missed and didn't realize that it was something they liked until it was gone. I'm wondering too, if it's because I teach 8th grade and in my classes, I have every reading level you can imagine. Because we're sort of tracked. We have on-level classes and honors classes. And those are the only two separations. So with my on-level students, I sometimes wonder if it's because, we have all these different reading levels in the room, if it's easier for them to experience that novel with others, to hear it read out loud, probably helps them understand it more. And then that discussion that you have in class, of course, reinforces any of that comprehension and understanding that they may have gotten on their own.
So go ahead, Randy.
I'm not editing this out, so someone's got to ask the question or share.
Actually, you were going to talk. Go right ahead.
I was just going to ask if there's something that you remember, even pre-COVID, that kids seem to really love. If there was something that they seemed to latch onto.
Like a book or an experience or an author, either.
I would say either.
Well,
yeah, either.
Jason Reynolds is amazing. If you don't already know this, you need to check him out. He has done something for young adult literature that I don't want to say no one else has been able to do it. Other people have done it, but no one's done it to the level that he has. He really is a champion for young adults. And it doesn't seem to matter which book I pick up by him. I read it to my students and they come in the next day and they say, are we reading that book again? He really has his pulse on what kids want to hear and read and be a part of. So I've had really good experiences with him, especially with Long Way Down. That is a favorite every single year. And I look forward to sharing it with my kids every year. My students, my kids, not my biological kids, my students, who I always say my kids. And then people are like, you mean your kids? No, not my kids. I mean, yeah. Yeah, but
they're all mine. Yep. Have you done Look Both Ways with them before?
I have. I've read parts of it with them. Yes, but I haven't done the whole novel.
Yeah, that's our 7th grade beginning of the year novel is Look Both Ways, and they love it. They just started it this
And that's
year.
the other
So
amazing thing
I've
about
seen
him.
it.
You
Yeah.
can read him with 7th grade. You can read him with 8th grade, 6th grade even loves him. I mean, and then I know that they also read Long Way Down at the high school. So they're reading it in 9th grade. It's just really is amazing. But I've had good experiences with the classics as well. I have really good memories about To Kill a Mockingbird. There's that climactic scene where the jury comes back and Tom Robinson is guilty. And every year, if the kids haven't read ahead and no one spoiled it for them, they get angry at that. And, I love it. I love that as a collective, we have this experience through reading. I mean, you can have that same experience through movies and other things, but I really enjoy having that through movies or through reading.
So
And I
there's two
love
things
sharing that joy with my students, right? Turning them on to something that they thought they might not have liked before.
So there are two things that strike me listening to the conversation. And one is something that's actually really human to do, and that is like give us two choices. We could do group reading, whole group reading, or we could do individual reading. Is there something in between? And to find out what that something in between is, do we need to look at that? Do we need to look at that through the lens of agency? So who is making the choice about the individual reading, or who is making the choice about the social reading? And I do think that a lot of schools the adults are making the choice about the individual reading because it's all about personalized learning, and we're on this like choice bandwagon, and ironically, we're taking the choice away from them on some level. I think we're giving them the choice as to what to read, but we're not giving them the choice as to how to read it. So, not being an ELA person, but certainly be curious about listening to the conversation here. Those were two things that just sort of crossed my mind as Bonnie and Rachel were talking.
No, I think that's a great point. And I do often give my students a choice to read with me, to read in a group of their friends, or to read individually. I will say that the one thing I struggle with is how to manage all of that, right? Because you have kids who want to read individually because they like that quiet, but I can't give them a quiet space in my classroom. It's very hard. And then you have kids who are reading in groups, and maybe they're reading and maybe they're not, and then I'm trying to read with another group. So it is a lot. And I'm not saying that it can't be done. I am not saying that at all. I am saying that it can be exhausting. It's, I don't think I've really found the right fit for me yet when it comes to that. Like I haven't figured out what really works. I've tried several things and haven't really found the right thing yet. I still believe in it. I still believe that, there's that ability for choice and there's a way to do it, but it's, I'm still tweaking it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the great debates that Rachel and I have had over the years, around a topic like this is really around our first mind shift of, being radically curious. So how, like Bonnie, what you just described as a challenge in your classroom is how do you honor the curiosity of learners and the 18,000 directions that can go, while also having to kind of sustain some order or structure or a reasonable pathway that empowers everybody to do the thing that they want. And so I want to just honor the fact that I think it connects to when you create a classroom space where kids can tap into their curiosity, that can lead to some unwieldy choices, for kids, and things like some kids are going to come naturally to a book. I think about my son who's 8, and every Monday he'd go to the library and, he'd come home with 5 nonfiction books. Every week there was at least one book that was about an animal, at least one book about a natural disaster, probably one book about the Titanic. I think he's read every book about the Titanic. But I guess my point here is that, that's an example of a way where he's not getting the shared reading experience, but he does have some choice. We joke about trying to push him into some fiction. Although the great irony for me is that I have not read fiction in probably, 8 years myself. Anyway, but my point here is to connect it back to the mind shifts. I think about how we can leverage reading through the lens of curiosity and how that can sometimes create some tensions in that space.
So going back to my earlier comment, one of the things that I know that we're doing with these conversations is to have them across the course of time and see how our compass points and our mind shifts evolve. And one of the things that I'm taking from this conversation is something that I think we do need to think about in terms of the language that we have the mind shifts written in. For example, design collaboratively, navigating from designing alone to designing with others. And it goes back to this idea of, is it this or is it this? Like, is the language that we've chosen there giving people the impression that you're here and now you need to move here and you need to do that all the time? And I don't think that's necessarily what we're saying. And is there a way that we will need to become clearer on that? Or is that language somewhat problematic? And we don't need to discuss that now, but I just think it's interesting, kind of a takeaway from my conversation. I think, Chad, you've got some thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think we talk all the time about how all of these mind shifts are contextual, right? As well. We think about Todd Rose's work and how much he has influenced our thinking around jaggedness. There are places, and I think I just described a place where for my son, when he's given some sense of choice, he might be more curious about certain things, where there's other places in his life it wouldn't be as appropriate for him to display that curiosity, and it would be more important for him to be reasonably compliant, for lack of a better word. And so I think you're right that there is an ideal, like in an ideal world, we would all feel comfortable and confident being curious and active. But I wonder about whether our world could function in which everybody was leading and no one was following. And so to your point, as a quick exercise in thinking about it, I think you might be right that we've presented them as two ends of a spectrum as opposed to a spectrum in and of itself.
I want to make a comment about that, Chad, if I can. One of the things that I've noticed as we move toward more personalized reading and personalized choices is that some students, not all, but some students pick up the same thing over and over. The same type of book or the same author, and they know they like that, and that's what they stick with, and they don't really veer away from that, or, out of fear, out of, reluctance, whatever it might be. And so as an adult or a mentor, whatever you want, a facilitator, whatever you want to call me in the classroom, I feel like part of my job is to expose them to things that they normally would not find on their own, right? Lead them to discovery, I guess, is the language I'm looking for.
Yes, you want to design so that you draw out the curiosity in them, that you can dangle something in front of them that they hadn't seen before and that they become curious about. And then they say, maybe I'll read that. That's the art of teaching, I think. That's the real challenge of teaching. It's so easy to say, here, read this. That's very left-brained. But designing it so that you create the conditions so the student becomes curious and then on their own decides, I think I'll read that. Then that's a true achievement.
I think that's where artists, I'm going to call them artists because that's what they really are. They're writers, they're teachers, they're this too, but ultimately they're artists. Like Jeff Anderson and Kelly Gallagher come into play, right? They share these mentor sentences or passages with us, and we share those with our students. And, you read, I don't know, a climactic moment in The Hate You Give or the opening scene of Long Way Down, and the kids go, when are we reading more, right? So you're right. It really is the art of teaching, right? Because I've got to pick that passage, that excerpt from the text very carefully, because I know, I want a certain group of students or, a certain class to really, really love this. It's important for that, So yeah, and it takes a lot of time to curate these materials. It's not easy.
I imagine.
That was one of the things that I was thinking about when I was asking the questions at the beginning was, I think that oftentimes we know how much we love a certain book or a certain class or a certain content area, but oftentimes it's the connection that we have, right? And so, we hear for you that it's that loss of the community element of reading and experience, but then you're also talking about creating that for kids, whether it's a shared whole class, whole novel, or if it's introducing them through those mentor sentences that it's being curious with the kids in the same way. Like, why do you want to do this? Why are you so excited about? Why do you want to read this book together? Why are you enjoying this the way that you do? Or why do you want to read more from Jason Reynolds? And then using that information to help you make those sort of next steps and decisions about how to support the community element that they seem to need and want based on your experience with them, while also still helping to sort of breadcrumb a little bit of that curiosity for them to lead them down the path so that they can keep going, on their own towards that thing, whatever that may be for them, even if it's Titanic.
That's
for the
brilliant.
900th
I love
time.
that. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Well, I am so grateful for all of you and for the conversation this evening. And just to those of you who are out there listening, thanks so much for joining us and learning alongside us for this edition of the Practitioner's Problem of Practice. And if you have a problem of practice or a topic or a question that you'd like to come and join us and discuss with us, you can join us in our community Facebook group, or you can visit thehuman.school, our website, and you can find some additional conversations and also a place where you can sign up and say, hey, I'd love to join you for this conversation. So
Thank
again,
you.
Bonnie, we thank you so much for joining us. And thanks, Randy and Rachel.